Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and this is Taking Care of Business. Joining me today is Sylvain Charlebois, who is Senior Director of the Agri-Foods Lab at Dalhousie University in Halifax. How are you, Sylvain?
Hi, Mario.
Okay, super. Let's talk about food prices. Anybody that's gone into a grocery store, supermarket these days has seen how the prices have risen. Why?
Well, we just saw new CPI numbers today for October. So StatsCan is telling Canadians that prices have gone up 3.8% year to year. I'm not sure where they get their food, but I think Canadians are seeing higher increases for sure. Now, bear in mind, StatsCan will measure inflation, whereas all of us, the rest of us, will look at prices. And
Yeah.
obviously, prices have gone up by way more than 3.8%. Meat, center of the store, particularly, even the freezer aisle, we've seen increases that are really skyrocketing.
Why is this happening?
I think there's a couple of factors. One, the grain market really has pushed prices higher at the meat counter. It's costing more to feed livestock. It's also costing more for processors to buy inputs as well. So it's impacting everyone. And in a low margin environment, you have to adjust prices. Labor is also an issue. If you want to keep your people around, you have to pay them more. We're seeing collective agreements being negotiated right now, being settled at 7-8% a year, wage increases of 7-8% every year for 3 years. That's massive. And lastly, transportation is costing more both on land and on water.
Yeah. Well, obviously this impacts the household budget of every Canadian out there, right? And more so for those who are with lesser incomes. How much more can people kind of withstand these price increases?
Well, wages have to go up, and that's really the trick here is that I think wages will go up, but it will take time. And so that's why it's a bit of a problem right now for many households. And obviously, of course, we're seeing our percentage of our budget dedicated to food increase because wages aren't necessarily going up. And
Yeah.
so I think hopefully in 2022, 2023, we will see wages go higher so people can absorb the effects of food inflation.
Well, you talked a little bit about an opinion piece that has gone out to different publications about food thefts happening in grocery stores. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's happening and why it's happening?
Well, about 2 months ago, I got some calls from retailers telling me that theft has gone up, and of course, it's hard to get raw data or any data on this issue because most of these cases are not reported at all. And so, but we are seeing more retailers hiring security guards, but not only security guards at the entrance, but security guards dressed as customers, so they roam around the store incognito to catch people in the act. And so they're really changing their ways and they're taking their matters into their own hands, unfortunately. But when you start looking at how theft is impacting grocery stores, it's really significant. I mean, you're looking at maybe 10, 12 infractions a week in some places.
Wow.
And in terms of numbers, we're looking at $3,000 to $4,000 worth of food being stolen in an average grocery store a week. So this would mean, Mario, that for every 500 grocery stores opening up every single day in Canada, 9 of them will be giving out their food for free. So it's a huge problem, and we are expecting that problem to become more prominent because of higher food inflation rate.
And that has a domino effect, doesn't it? If usually people or companies that suffer from theft, are victims of theft, they recoup their losses by rising prices, right?
Exactly. So at the end of the day, we all pay for theft.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to increase your prices by 1.5, 2%, 2.5% to offset the impact of theft. Theft is a terrible thing. Back in 1916, Piggy Wiggly's decided to allow patrons in aisles instead of just giving to a clerk a list, a grocery list. In 1916, it was the first year where we saw people who could roam around aisles. It's a privilege. It's a privilege to do that, right? Because you basically can touch and feel anything that's not yours. And we shouldn't forget that it is indeed a privilege for everyone when they walk into a store.
So where is this going in terms of prices? Do you see no hope on the horizon for kind of stabilization of prices in the near future? Or?
Well, I think that's what's likely to happen is that we'll continue to see more grocers being careful. They'll watch, and Mario, a lot of grocers out there are starting to focus more on self-service,
Yeah.
self-service counters, and obviously that can increase theft. So they'll be watching patrons very closely. They'll make sure they have all the equipment in place. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the use of RFID codes more often, RFID tags on food. I wouldn't be surprised to see that more and more, and investing in technologies that could actually prevent and deter theft.
Are you surprised? You mentioned the self checkouts, and it just reminded me just yesterday. I was at a local grocery store. There was nobody around the self checkout, and I thought that was odd, right? And do you think they're, pardon the pun, but do you think they're manned enough right now in terms of watching for stuff like that?
I do expect, because of our labor issues, I actually do expect that self-checkouts are going to become more and more popular, because they do show up for work. They don't ask for wage increases. They don't get sick. They're easy to manage. The banking sector, they've done that several years ago, and it worked for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if, with better technology, let's be honest here. The technology has never hasn't been there all the time. So you want better technology to be used by people. But the bottom line is that I think we are expecting more self-checkouts at the grocery store. But the one thing about theft that we need to underscore is that a lot of cases, many cases, involve employees, not just customers. And this is really a big problem. And we're looking at
Yeah.
major heists conducted by employees, and all these products are often counterfeited and will be rerouted towards the food service industry.
Mm-hmm. A personal question, Sylvain. The last time you were in a grocery store, what was the one thing that shocked you in terms of its price?
It's the meat, it's the beef. In fact, the other weekend we had some friends over, a couple, and we decided to use the barbecue again. It was still warm out. $120 for 4 pieces of meat.
Whoa, smoke.
And our guests, just for fun, they said, "Oh my goodness, you're greeting us with beef. You guys must be rich." That's not good for a food category when you say that.
Yeah, exactly.
You.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny though? Just as an aside, I find it's interesting that yes, restaurant prices have gone up a little bit depending on where, but they haven't skyrocketed, like in terms of dealing with the cost increases that they're facing in terms of those products. Have you noticed that at all, or?
Well, I mean, it's hit and miss. It really, there's a mixed bag of different experiences out there right now. So
Yeah.
what is a constant, and when you look at even the CPI report today, I mean, all categories are impacted by inflation, even peanut butter. And peanut butter has been a non-story for 20 years in Canada. You know that, Mario.
Yeah.
And now this year it's up 5% out of nowhere. And so you can feel that something is going on, and it's not just in Canada, it's everywhere in the Western world.
Interesting. All right, Sylvain, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks very much for taking the time.
Take care, Mario.
All right, super. That was Sylvain Charlebois, who is Senior Director of the Agri-Foods Lab at Dalhousie University in Halifax. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.